Okay, number 2 tonight, and we bring back our contributor, not a contributing artist, but contributing correspondent. How's that work?
Guy that's good at everything.
Like on the Daily Show, whenever John Oliver would pop up, it'd be like correspondent or whatever. What? Anyway,
I don't know what they call him. Yeah, I don't know what they call him.
Tyler McAfoose. Greg gracefully bowed out for this segment because he said, I've got nothing to add to it. So you know, he segued on out of this one for a little bit, so that we can talk about a game that we both recently played and beat, Trigger Witch. Trigger Witch is the second game from New Zealand-based indie studio Rainbite, their first one being Reverie in 2018. And the team consists primarily of 3 members, although if you go through the credits, obviously they do, contract out for sound and art and shit like that, which is not uncommon for small indie teams. So we kind of have this broken down into 3 sort of subsections. The gameplay, which is literally, how the game plays, how it runs, what the mechanics are and things like that. The presentation, which is, how it looks, how it sounds, that sort of thing. And then finally the narrative or the story. It'll be down the line, but we are going to spoil the story a little bit because it's hard to talk about this game without talking about the big twist that comes towards the end. But we will put that towards the end of the conversation, and we'll do, like spoiler warnings or whatever. Yeah. The game itself, so Trigger Witch, PlayStation, Nintendo Switch, Xbox, I think it's on PC as well, is a twin stick shooter in which players control a witch named Colette and navigate her on a journey where she uses the tried and true witch tenets of heavy duty firearms rather than spells. Players are equipped with hand cannons, AK-47s, Uzis, flamethrowers, and much more. So just for the layperson, a twin stick shooter is where on the left stick you control the movement of the character, and on the right stick you aim, and then you shoot, with one of the back triggers. So from just a pure gameplay standpoint,
is like Call of Duty a twin stick shooter?
It's a first person shooter.
Oh, okay.
So I guess technically you could say that it is, but you're in that first person.
This is a third person.
Kind of. I mean, that's an oversimplification. What's the Falcon and the Winter Soldier meme? It's an oversimplification, but he's not wrong. Yeah. So from a pure gameplay standpoint, and just to throw out maybe some other twin stick shooters that are kind of out there, Resogun is probably the best that I've played, which is a PS4, early PS4 exclusive from now first party Housemarque. It's awesome. It's all about score chasing. Dead Nation is another one. Helldivers is another one. So those are just some twin stick shooters. This was, I'm assuming, your first experience with a game like this?
In many aspects, yes. As you said, left stick controlling the direction of the person, right stick. I mean, I've played first person games like this where you're aiming like higher and lower, but like this being a 2D game, it takes a lot of that out of it. And it's actually something that I can play because I get super dizzy and disoriented playing first person shooters where you're controlling and spinning and all that kind of stuff.
Sure. So from a base gameplay, without getting into, the look, the feel, the story, things like that, how did you enjoy the game?
So there's the beginning of the tutorial, the training. I was still pretty bad at the game. And then the first few dungeons, I was still pretty bad at the game. And I think it just takes a long time to get your upgrades. And once you get your upgrades, the game becomes a lot more playable, I guess. But I was dying all the time.
Yeah.
The game's very forgiving, though. When you die, you just go right back to the same room with full health and full everything. And but
try again. basically. It's
Right.
not,
Yeah.
it's not
All
like
the enemies come back to life, though. That's one thing.
yeah, sure. Okay, so the guns and that sort of thing play, obviously, if you're a witch, you're expecting maybe, magic, fire,
Some kind
ice.
of spell, or
Sure.
yeah, you unlock
So
an ice rod or something. Yeah.
from this point of view, and was it kind of like a fun, did you think it was kind of like a fun change of pace to, I mean, there's obviously like some humor involved in this, and we'll get
Yeah.
further
I don't
along
think
with that, but
there were a couple of things that you would expect in a game like this that just were not there. And I think that was by design. As you said, spells or
sure.
potions or something other than just health. I guess that's right. Ammunition. So ammunition was the second component to it, that you had to switch between weapons when you're out of ammunition. And, each of the guns was used in a different way. So like some of them were OP in certain situations, and some of them were completely useless for most of the game. I never used them at all.
Right.
So maybe some balancing in the weapons might have been neat. You could have used more of them. They did a really good job with the different puzzles and things like that, where you had to start learning new skills throughout the game. So it ended up making me better at it. But
yeah, I think like the main thing, as you said, the learning curve is kind of high at the beginning. And it's really, for me, it was, the tutorial was not too bad. The first dungeon really, really kicked my ass. I think I died on the boss there, which was the broomstick boss, one of the broomstick sections, a lot. I think I died maybe 7 or 8 times. And it was getting a hold of being able to use the dash mechanic in a consistent fashion, because I think it's easy to use when you're just kind of on the map and there's not that many enemies that you're dealing with, and it's easy to kind of maneuver around the room or the world map. But once you actually get into a situation where it's like, shit, there's a lot of guys here and I have to take them down, I'm relying very heavily on the guns that I was using. I need to figure out a way to use the dash, to remind myself to use the dash button more consistently. And once I got a hold of that, it was pretty easy peasy, lemon squeezy for me. I think there was one other boss that took me maybe like 3 or 4 tries, but outside of that, the game scaled pretty easily after that first dungeon. Which now we'll kind of move on to just the presentation. The game's obviously 2D, top down, sprite based. It clearly draws inspiration from a lot of action RPGs from the SNES and PS1 era. The music for the game also will feel pretty familiar to gamers who've played a lot of games in that era. I know with Reverie, their first game, they said they drew a lot from Link to the Past and Earthbound. I think with this, there's a lot of like The Secret of Mana, that sort of thing, maybe some Chrono Trigger. The sound effects of the guns cocking and loading was a nice touch. I felt like it hit, kind of hit home with bullets, what the game was. Yeah, bullets dropping out, the gore that was just completely excessive, but in a very comical way. Like, totally there's an option to turn it off. Yeah, there's an option to turn it off to like pinata mode or whatever, but it was just like you take out like a group of 7 or 8 enemies and it looked like the Battle of Falkirk and Braveheart. You know what I mean?
Let me ask you a question regarding that. If you played this on pinata mode, would you play it in front of your kids?
I don't know. Like maybe, my son plays Minecraft and he's like understands like you have to kill creepers to get stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I
think it'd just be colorful enough. The thing that would prevent me from doing it is you're shooting guns at enemies. Right. But there wouldn't be as much violence really, because there's no gore. It'd just be like poof, and then some gems pop out. So that'd be kind of colorful and fun. Right. But I really don't think my 4-year-old would be ready for something like this. No,
I don't think that I'd probably, play this with the blood and guts on.
Absolutely not with the guts on. No.
With my kids, but with a 6-year-old. But he's still not there yet in terms of being able to control a game at the rate, because you do have to play this pretty fast.
Yes.
I would say that's part of it, is you do have to play the game quickly, moving around the room, that sort of thing, to be able to be quote unquote to get good at it. You do. I like games like that. I like playing fast, especially with 2D games, because there's just a feeling of being, for me, there's more of a feeling of being in control of the game. I just like the speed aspect of it. So I did like that. We'll move on to the actual like story, which I think is really of this game. I found the gameplay loop to be pretty fun. It's a short game. It took me 9.5 hours to platinum trophy, which means get everything in the game. It was fun. It moved quickly. Once I got past that first dungeon, it wasn't very difficult for me, minus maybe one or two things. But I really think what makes this game, at least for me, is the narrative, is the plot, which is crazy. Like at the end, like it seems very like
it's
there's
very cookie cutter, and it's very cookie cutter and straightforward for the first 75 to 80% of the game, and then
there's yes, it's the trappings of this kind of story. There's some good tongue-in-cheek references and different things.
It's really good writing
some
for a shorter game.
Yeah, definitely very good writing. But this is where we're going to spoil things. So here's your spoiler alert.
Yeah, tune out if you want to play this. You absolutely should play this game just for the ending, and it's such a short game, so you should try it.
And it's like $12, $15. You know what I mean? There's no excuse. So the story, witches and goblins live separated by a void. I'm leaving some things out to, but when the witches come of age, they are given the chance to join the Clip, which is an army of gun-toting witches that protect their realm. On the day of her trial, Colette sees a mysterious man in black and goes on a quest to rid the realm of this antagonist. She braves several dungeons on her way to rescue her mother, who was captured by the man in black. She follows him into the void to reveal that he is actual literal Joseph Stalin, and he must be defeated before he uses the magic to create an army of magic soldiers capable of world domination.
He talks about socialism. He talks about how he's going to use this magic for
the whole nine. It's literal. You go through, and that's what, and we were talking before we started recording, and I remember, because I've beaten this a few days ago now, but going through, and it's like you see these soldiers and they're like very human, whereas the rest of the characters that you're fighting are monsters and different,
or literal like things. Radishes and onions,
right? You go through, it's like a soldier, and I'm like looking at the floor, and the last gun you get is called like Tesla's something or other. I'm looking at the floor, and there's like red with like the hammer and sickle, and I'm like, is it gonna be Joseph Stalin? And then he just in a flourish whips off the cape, and it's actual Joseph Stalin. Completely insane, but I loved it. You know what I mean? I thought it was hilarious, and which is obviously what they were going for.
Yeah, as I was getting closer and closer to the end, I had either heard from you or just whisperings that, hey, get ready for a crazy twist at the end. Yes. I was like, every time the man in black would show up as a character and you'd read something he says, like, what's going on? I think this guy has a mustache. Like, maybe I know who this guy is. And then I started thinking crazy stuff, like maybe it's like Jack Black or Nacho Libre or something, and he's going to have like a unitard or something. But
yeah, it was certainly a surprise, because by like we both said, minus a few sort of like fun references. I believe in one of the goblin tents there's a reference to The Princess Bride. I don't know if you caught that. There's like they're like wine glasses, and he says something about, or she says something about inconceivable.
Oh, I've heard. I didn't really put the two together, but that's amazing.
Yeah. I think that it was a reference. There was some, different references to like this. One of the trophies was called like the sacred symbols, which is the PlayStation symbols and stuff like that. So there were some good like Easter eggy references, but for the most part, it was kind of a by the numbers. Like I have to save the realm.
Mhm.
from this bad guy. I have to go
Upgrade
get
your
these,
weapons, get
upgrade
some
your
potions,
weapons,
whatever. Yeah.
get these ingredients to bring down this wall that separates
Yeah.
us. And then,
I mean,
you know,
I'll give them credit that the guns, instead of like swords and shields and armor and upgrades and, you know, going and getting specific tokens and things like that that'll give you special powers. Uh, witches with guns is not something that I would expect ever.
right,
You know,
right.
that it was kind of neat. Like the trailer was very captivating when you see the trailer and it's just like, oh, little witch, and then it's just like destruction and chaos and death.
Yes.
Which is amplified at the very end of the game as well. Like with, I don't know if we want to talk about the two murders at the end of the game.
Yes. Yeah.
But,
Yeah. I mean, you know, we've already spoiled the fact that the main bad guy is, you know,
Joseph
the leader
Stalin,
of communist Russia. You know,
it doesn't get much bigger than that. Yeah.
Yeah. So her mother is just like shot in the head in front of her.
And then you shoot Joseph Stalin in the head and
Yes.
explode him everywhere.
Yes.
And then, yeah.
Yeah. After he rockets to the fucking moon and you follow him on your broomstick.
As violent as cartoon 2D gameplay can be, it's not like, you know, a rated R movie.
It's so over the top that it's like obviously tongue in cheek. How
they're trying to make you laugh.
Yes.
They're like, oh my God, that was ridiculous.
Yeah. It's not, this isn't like realistic, like, you know, 6 Days in Fallujah violence or something like that. It's very cartoony, over the top.
Yeah.
What did you think? Because with the mechanics, we didn't really talk about this, the broomstick sections. How did you feel? Because those were a little bit different.
Yeah, it was, I'm going to actually say it was annoying that you could only shoot straight up. Like,
yeah,
I feel like any other part of the game, you have complete mobility to do whatever you want. I guess they maybe don't want you to spin around and get facing the wrong way or something, but
yeah,
I think that you could still aim your gun at an angle and still be facing up the entire time, and that wouldn't take anything away. It would actually make the game a little bit more, I guess, playable. Maybe it's like a nod to like Contra or something, where you can only shoot.
Right.
I think Contra, you can actually shoot on an angle though. I don't remember.
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure.
Games like that though.
Yeah. So the only other thing that I would really add or really ask, did you try like any of the optional stuff, like the arena? Did you go for as far as like the trophies, did you specifically seek out like all the weapon pieces? And there's like the little casino pinball game and stuff like that. Yeah, you're not like a trophy guy like I am, so
no, but I didn't even know really trophies was a thing until I started figuring out that Brenton has like 100 platinum trophies or something insane.
Right.
And realized 84. Like how much 84, okay, how much of an accomplishment that is. But then normally when I play like an RPG or an action adventure game or something like that, I get distracted. So like this game took me 11 hours to beat, and sure, Brenton platinumed it in 9.5 hours.
Yeah.
But I get distracted just exploring every nook and cranny and trying to figure out like, is there a secret here or whatever? And then in this game, you can actually buy maps that show you where all the secrets are. And then once you find out where the secret is, you still have to figure out how to get there.
Right.
So some of that's a bit tedious and time consuming, because the like quick travel in a lot of games is great. This one, it was okay. I think that there could have been better quick travel.
I would have liked to be able to quick travel somewhere in the Goblin world, because really all you could do is come back to your home, like kind of home base sort of deal. Yeah. I would have liked something to go up north, but some of those hidden chests were. I'll be 100% honest. I beat the game and I had to use the video to find the last like 6 or 7, which I'm not above doing that if I,
wow. I didn't use any videos or anything like that. I think the game was linear enough that I could figure it out if I just spent the time, which if you probably spent two more hours, you would have figured it out. But you just have to buy maps, and there's a question mark sitting right on the map for you.
Right.
And then it's just a matter of, well, how the hell do I get there?
Right. Because there were some where it's like the question mark is center bottom, but the entrance and you go through a cave is like way up here. Yeah. So there was that's what I mean. Like the last like 6 or 7 were kind of a pain to to track down from that perspective, because most of them were like half of them were already in the dungeons.
Yeah.
And those were easy to find. But that was the last one that I didn't have. And I was like, where the hell? Because I had all the upgrades on everything. And I'm like, I'm missing one. Where the hell is it? You know what I mean? There's no question marks on the map. So I had to start going back through the dungeon.
Into each individual dungeon?
Yeah. Yeah. Fortunately, it was the second one that I went into, where it was like, okay, because it ends up putting a question mark on the map after the fact, when the dungeon's clear or whatever. And the dungeons weren't like, too cumbersome. And there's like ways to teleport through to kind of cut down on the travel and such. But, it wasn't like going through a dungeon and like Link to the Past or something, you know what I mean? Where it's like, if you miss the treasure chest in room whatever on floor B, it's going to take you an hour and a half to get there. It was not
all the monsters are dead, so you can just scroll back through.
Yeah. That was.
It was very. I mean, you brought Link to the Past twice now. I mean, it was very Link to the Past for me, or Secret of Mana. Like the aesthetic of it was extremely stolen in my mind. It actually made me feel like, how did they get away with this? To a point. And like you said, the music. I wonder if it's like the David Bowie Vanilla Ice, where it's like, yeah, we stole this, but we're not going to say we stole it. Like, we just changed one little note here or there, and that's fine.
I don't think the music's that glaring, but
it's just nostalgic. It's just very reminiscent of that era of games. So I wonder if I'd have to do some research, but like, I wonder if the exact same composer does like all of those games, like the Dragon Quest games or the
I know the same guy does most of the Final Fantasy stuff. I can tell you that pretty much for sure. But like I said, this is, for me, it's a play. It's like it's $15. I think it was $12.50 on PS Plus, like day and date when it came out. So it was already discounted a little bit. If you're on Xbox, if you're on Switch, it's going to be comparable. The prices that are, I don't think, are changed too much based on the system. And it's just a fun, for me, games like this are they're like awesome palate cleansers when you're playing shit that's like hyper realistic all the time. Like, you go from playing Spider-Man or The Last of Us or, God of War, or lately I've been playing Far Cry or whatever. And it's all these like super realistic environments. It's just very nice to just kind of step back into what it was like to be a gamer in 1995. You know what I mean? With this sort of aesthetic
but you're smart enough now to figure out the puzzles.
Yeah. Well, and I can read.
Yeah, that's true.
Because that was one of the hangups for me trying to play Final Fantasy when I was like 7, and I couldn't. I read like, every fourth word I understood. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's just
not really even in English at that point. It's like its own language too.
Yeah, well, there's bad translation, bad localization, and stuff like that. And that's how you get things like all your base art belong to us. But it's definitely a play for me, and I liked it enough that I went and I purchased their first game, Reverie. I haven't gotten into it yet, but it is on my cross media bar, and I do plan to.
How much is Reverie?
I think it was like $10 too. So maybe 10, 12. It's in the same thing. And it's very impressive for, I think, a team of 3 people to be able to pull something off like this. And, we talked about that they probably subcontract with stuff. And
we've talked in the past about we could write a video game at this point. And you said, well, I'm actually writing something. I don't know what you're writing, but I don't know if that has gotten tabled for this, but the storyline is just so cookie cutter in almost all of these games that we could recite them chapter and verse at this point. So creating our own. I'm not
sure I'd come up with Joseph Stalin.
Well, I think that's kind of the neat thing about this game is they obviously were aware that there is such a cookie cutter mentality to this kind of a game, and the storyline and the story arc, and it's going to be the hero saves the day and everything else. So kind of masking the villain for the entirety of the game and then revealing at the final minute, it was hilarious. Perfectly done. So I'm going to say it's a play as well. I don't even play that many games, but I'm glad that Brenton turned me on to this one.
Thanks for coming on, contributing correspondent Ty McAfoos. Trigger Witch out now, Rainbite Studios, indie games. I love indies, mainly because they're very affordable. But,
nice.
All right, take care, my friend.
Yep, later.